All right, good morning, everyone. Looks like we've kind of reached a plateau with people coming in here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome and good morning to the 2020 SAN annual meeting, or the SANual meeting, as we have been calling it recently. My name is Erica Rossetti, and I'm the Schuylkill Action Network Coordinator, and I'm with the Partnership for the Delaware Estuary. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Kate Huddlemeyer, who's our Collaborative Programs Manager. She just gave a little wave if you can see her, as well as several other amazing speakers and awardees from different organizations across the country today that have agreed to share their expertise with us. So as you can tell, this format is a little bit different than previous years. So we thank you for joining us and being flexible, especially since we aren't able to offer Albright College's amazing catering like we normally have. But we do have a great 2-hour Zoom webinar set up today. So I'll be passing off the spotlight to different speakers throughout the morning. We'll have time for a short break in the middle. But before we get started, I just want to give a brief tutorial about the Zoom webinar today. So as you could tell, all of the participants are automatically muted with your video off. The chat is also disabled at the moment, so if you have any questions, you can feel free to use the Q&A feature at the bottom and type your questions there. And also, this webinar is being recorded, so afterwards we'll post it to our YouTube and we'll be able to watch it afterwards. So we'd just like to get a sense of who's in the room today. So you should see 2 poll questions come up. The first one is, what sector do you best represent? So if you're from nonprofit, government, the private sector, education, or just the general public. And then if there's anything we forgot, there's a box for other as well. So I'll give about 15 more seconds. Okay, so it looks like we've got about half of our folks today coming from the government sector, and then a little bit more from nonprofit, and a couple other folks here as well. So thank you for joining us. And then we also are going to ask where you're tuning in from today. So whether you're within the Schuylkill watershed or somewhere else in the US or outside of the US. And I'll give people about 10 more seconds. Okay, so this is pretty much what we expected, but we've got about 2/3 of people on the call today are from the watershed, and then we also have 15 people from other states or other areas outside the watershed. So again, thanks for joining us. And then instead of, being able to have networking and discussions, we figured we'd kick it off with some fun icebreaker polls, just to kind of get into the swing of things here. So our first poll is, what's your favorite fall activity? Carving pumpkins, looking at leaves, making bonfires, Halloween activities, farm visits, making fall food and drinks, or just being outside. You can select any that you like to do, and we'll see which one's the winner. Okay, great. So it looks like being outside is everybody's clear favorite. I agree with that. And I've also been making some mulled cider recently, so that's also fun. And then lastly, we have one more poll, which is, what is your favorite outdoor activity to do in the Schuylkill watershed? So whether it's hiking, boating, fishing, biking, birding, looking at plants, volunteering, or if you've never been to the Schuylkill watershed, you can select that as well. Great, I'll give folks about 5 more seconds. Okay, and again, it looks like hiking is our clear winner here. A couple people also said some sort of boating or biking or fishing. So awesome. Thank you, everybody. That was fun. Next up, I'm going to show everybody a video just introducing the Schuylkill Action Network in case we have any new faces here. One of the things we've been lucky to do as part of 2020's many changes is make several videos highlighting some of our partner projects. And this is one of the first videos that we made back in March or April, just as an introduction to the SAN. So hopefully, let's see, make sure you can all hear this. The Schuylkill River watershed is a 2,000 square mile area of land and water in southeast Pennsylvania. From the headwaters in the mountains of Schuylkill County all the way down to the city of Philadelphia, this geography drains entirely to the Schuylkill River and eventually the Delaware River and Bay. At 130 miles long, the Schuylkill River is the largest tributary to the Delaware River and is a source of drinking water for nearly 2 million people. In order to protect this valuable drinking water source, the EPA, Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection, and Philadelphia Water Department partnered together in 2003 to form the Schuylkill Action Network, or SAN for short. The SAN is a collaborative network of diverse partners and stakeholders. Spanning 11 counties and 235 municipalities, all of our partners work to improve water resources in the Schuylkill River watershed. Our mission becomes possible when these partners collaborate to achieve results through our middle name, Action. In order to address the diverse landscapes and environmental needs in the Schuylkill River watershed, the SAN manages more than half a dozen work groups that engage our partners on different issues that matter to all of us. From abandoned mine drainage up in the headwaters, to agricultural restoration in our farmlands, to stormwater management in more urban areas, the SAN offers something for everyone. Every 5 years, we reflect on our past successes and challenges and look ahead to our future opportunities and priorities. Your feedback will help us develop a new strategic plan that guides our actions and supports our mission. You can get involved by joining a work group, attending events, taking our surveys, or simply signing up to receive emails. If you care about the future of agriculture, climate, conservation, drinking water, Thanks, Kate. Sorry, we're having a technical difficulty with the video here, but it was almost over, and that was the general gist of the Schuylkill Action Network. And you might have recognized the narrator's voice, so hopefully you don't get too sick of me by the end of the day today. So now I just want to jump into our agenda and introduce our speakers. So we have a nice day lined up today. We'll start off with a presentation about the One Water approach. Then we'll move into a presentation about environmental justice in the Schuylkill River watershed. And then we'll announce our SAN MVP awardees. And then after a short break, we'll have our project funding panel. So we have 4 different programs that'll be speaking to today. And then finally, we will unveil our new strategic action plan, just give you general idea of what the future holds for the SAN. So with that, I would like to introduce Dr. Harry Zhang. He is the Research Program Manager for Integrated Water and Stormwater at the Water Research Foundation. And I'll stop sharing here and let Harry go ahead and take over.
Thanks, Erica. Good morning, everyone. So I'm very glad to have this opportunity to talk about the One Water approach and the integrated water management from the Water Research Foundation. So here's a quick overview of my presentation today. So first, I'm going to give an introduction and then tell you who we are and what we cover from the Water Research Foundation. And then I'm going to focus on talk about some of the like a definition and some of the core concepts of the One Water approach and integrated water management. After that, I want to give you a few examples, I think, of how we apply the One Water approach in the stormwater management. For example, holistic stormwater management, as we'll call it. And at the end, I'm going to provide a summary and then the path forward. Maybe there could be some collaboration opportunity with the network. Just quickly who we are. So maybe the official name of the Research Foundation is the Water Research Foundation. It is through the merger of the Water Environment Reuse Foundation, and then based in Alexandria, Virginia, and the Water Research Foundation based in Denver, Colorado. You may have heard the name Water Environment Research Foundation, and then Water Reuse Research Foundation. You may be wondering, where are those guys? So we're now part of the big family here. Yeah. So they all together under this umbrella, the Water Research Foundation. So the integrated foundation has about 1,200 subscribers with a great majority from utility and the municipality. There's the research portfolio is about 2,300 projects with estimated research value of $700 billion. So when did the Research Foundation starting as a One Water concept or One Water approach? This was started in 2009 with an exploratory team on this program called Sustainable Integrated Water Management, SWIM. It's labeled as a research challenge because they have a specific research question the team try to tackle. But in a brief summary, it covers integrated water, stormwater, watershed management, decentralized system, climate impact on water quantity and quality. Because this is from a research challenge, so there's research objectives. So here are the three key research objectives for this sustainable integrated water management, which is sort of a beginning of the One Water concept. So the first one is to take holistic view of the wastewater, stormwater, drinking water, reuse water, and then transition integrated water management approach into practice. The second one is focus on the life cycle cost analysis with a specific application using stormwater and green infrastructure as one of the core area to demonstrate the importance of life cycle cost analysis. The third one is emphasize the transform the comprehensive planning and the watershed management through the multi-stakeholder collaboration approach, and also the scale is also important. So One Water approach, they need to be operated at both national, state, regional, and local level. So here's from some of the effort from that research challenge. I think at core, One Water is really the integrated approach. One of the key points from the exploratory effort is so water is more than just a service provision. It's a key component of a livable city and communities. This is one diagram showing One Water approach. As you can see, one of the important elements is to contribute to a livable city. So you may ask, okay, could you give me a sort of a definition of a One Water approach or One Water concept? So here's one just for your reference. So this one was published in a research report by the foundation in 2015. So the key things here is a one water approach, consider a water cycle as an integrated system. Another point is all water flows are recognized as a potential resources. So you may consider a resource management approach. And also another key aspect, really the connection of the different water matrix. You need to consider connecting, the drinking water, wastewater, stormwater, reuse water, and also like a groundwater into the play. And then also consider their combined impact on, the human aspect, also ecosystem. So this is in 2015, after a couple of years, research effort, I think the Water Environment Research Foundation published this report called "A Pathway to One Water: A Guide for Institutional Innovation." So they using a diagram called One Water Paradigm Shift. So which this circle they break down into 6 key elements. I'm going to elaborate a little bit here. So the first one, starting with strong leadership and the vision, and then if you go around the circle, another element is really the partnership between the departments and also of the organization, also collaborating a partner. Another element is really in order to have this one water paradigm, it's important to have organizational culture that embrace one water approach, and also transparent engagement of the community and the stakeholders is very important. From economic finance side, I think that the favorable environment condition for both public and private investment is also important. From regulatory side, I think a regulatory environment that encouraging both public and private participation is also very, very critical. So here is sort of 6 key elements, I think, from this one water paradigm shift. From that effort, we try to apply into a specific case studies. So this is a public report available to public after you create like a free account with the Research Foundation. So 2 years later, Research Foundation continue with one water research. So we released a report called a Blueprint for One Water. Again, this one reinforced one water concept and recognize water from all sources must be managed holistically and cooperatively. We putting more on the planning side of things. So here's sort of what we call one water framework. Here are some example plans that you can consider. How do you do that? Because in the you may already have some plan in place. Maybe you just need to put into this one water framework. For example, for drinking water, you may already have drinking water supply reliability plan, and then for wastewater, recycled water, you may have a master plan. Stormwater green infrastructure management plan, maybe you already have something in there, and also like a climate change adaptation plan, infrastructure resilience plan. So if you already have a plan, this may be a good way to incorporate together, thinking under the umbrella of the one water framework. Just to give a quick summary on the Research Foundation's research on the one water approach. So I already mentioned the first 2, which we have a public report available to public. There's 2 ongoing effort. One is called One Water Cities. I'm going to elaborate in the next slide. And then the other one is really the pre-treatment program in the One Water initiatives. I want to elaborate a little bit on the One Water City on development of guidance and the documents and assessment matrix. So the concept really apply one water framework into a city or municipality, but with the focus on from research perspective, really can we develop a rigorous rating system with a key matrix benchmark to assess whether a city or municipality is in the progression toward one water cities. So this project will also cover some of the analysis for existing one water cities. For example, there's like in California, you may have heard of One Water San Francisco. So there's a plan there, and also One Water Los Angeles. In Texas, at state level, there's advancing One Water in Texas. So there's some case study, and then the case study will go beyond U.S., including some of the best practice or good examples from the European countries. And then I'm going to say, I think maybe for relevant to the network here, maybe the Philadelphia, maybe it could be another the example later on in the participating part of the research here. Yeah. One of the useful effort, I think maybe to apply One Water approach is through the integrated planning framework, because this one EPA has issued an integrated planning framework and was codified into amendments to the Clean Water Act in 2019. So many utility municipality has been starting using integrated planning framework. So Research Foundation published a companion report early this year. The first one is on the toolbox for completing an alternative analysis as a part of an integrated planning frame approach to water quality compliance. Second, specific user's guide for integrated wastewater stormwater planning. I'd like to add, I think the integrated planning for can go beyond wastewater and stormwater. They can go to apply into drinking water and water reuse as well. In the next maybe a 7 slide, I'm going to want to give you sort of maybe more concrete examples how One Water approach can be applied into a stormwater management. At the Research Foundation, we call this a holistic stormwater management. We use a 3-pillar approach: performance, life cycle costs, and co-benefits. So here's on the more detail on the performance side of things. So Research Foundation has maintained and also own this international stormwater BMP database. This is like more than 20 years effort through the collaboration within the water sector, including support from the EPA, American Society's 17-year, American Public Works Association, Federal Highway Administration. So the core database, they divided by the use of stormwater management. They divide into urban, agricultural, and also transportation, including a stream restoration as a part of the best practice. And then the other exciting thing here really is also connected with the urban stormwater quality database, original hosted by the University of Alabama, Dr. Pitt, and then after his retirement, he tried to connect his work long-term work on this area with the Research Foundation. I want to just give a sort of a mention of watershed management, stream restoration here. There's 2 research product, I think, including one of ongoing research I want to mention to the group here. One is how do you credit a water quality benefit from stream restoration? So Research Foundation has developed this crediting guidance documents. And then the other effort is really a holistic and nutrient management. In June this year, we collaborate with the Philadelphia Water Department, and then at DRBC, we host a webcast that was well received. It's got 800 people join the webcast. So I want to give make another thank you for the Philadelphia Water Department and DRBC on supporting this holistic nutrient management. Another example is really through, this is one of the decision supporting tool, because I mentioned life cycle cost. So this is a decision support tool specifically on the stormwater infrastructure. It is like a 4-year, $2 million effort funded by EPA Office of Research Development with a supporting matching fund from the Research Foundation. So the tool seek to answer if you have a different scenario of the green and green infrastructure within a community and then watershed, how do you compare those scenarios? The benchmark we're using is both on performance, and also you can compare life cycle cost, and also a co-benefit, I think, from social and environmental benefit. And how does the land use change and climate impact affect the future performance of the green and gray infrastructure? So this tool has those capability, can help you answer those questions for your decision making. Just a quick snapshot on the tool look like. I think again, this is using the one water concept, focus on 3 pillars approach on stormwater, from the performance, including hydrological performance, like a runoff volume reduction, the pollutant loading reduction, and also life cycle cost. The matrix we're using is like a net present value, and then they including the whole life cycle cost, construction capital cost, operation maintenance cost, and also replacement cost. And then another matrix that you could use is really average annual cost over the design life. And also for the co-benefit, that we're using triple bottom line approach, and then user actually can make some selection themselves, depending on the important factor you assign to the matrix. This is just want to give you a sort of a picture here, as you get a little bit of feeling on the holistic approach. But again, this is a 3-pillar approach. Performance cost is on the life cycle cost, and the benefit is focused on the co-benefits. So this one just basically, you can compare different scenarios without getting the details. Basically, you can see from here, there's 3 scenarios, and then you can, using a 3-pillar approach, compare their performance, life cycle cost, and also co-benefit, and then make an informed decision holistically. So drill down to the little bit on the co-benefit of the green stormwater infrastructure. This is one of the matching project of research foundation funded to supporting this EPA effort. So we're using triple bottom triple approach, and then we try to focus on rigorous economic evaluation, how to quantify and monetize the co-benefit of the green stormwater infrastructure. We divide it into a 12 category. For example, for the financial benefit, I think you can vision as avoid the infrastructure cost and the treatment cost if you do green infrastructure, and also assess asset life extension, and also energy saving from the green infrastructure, and also like an environmental benefit. I think water quality, and also associated aquatic life improvement, carbon reduction, and other economic benefits. And then from the social aspect, I think there's a health benefit from air quality improvement, reduce the urban heat stress, increase the recreational opportunities. In some cases, even the increase of property value, and also green jobs creation. So we through some rigorous economic analysis, we try to providing a framework and a tool to help user to use that with a holistic thinking using one water approach. So flooding has been also an important topic here. So if you apply one water concept into the flooding, especially urban flooding, so this one we call a holistic flood management and climate resilience. So you can see we have some published report and also an ongoing project. So focus on the climate resilience planning, and then also the proactive flood management, and also modeling, so holistic flood management and modeling effort. So with all that, I think I just want to show you sort of application of the one water concept into the stormwater arena. You can apply into other, water areas. So to summarize, I think I'm providing the function of the research foundation, our mission, and also sort of I'll give you a little bit one of the definition we use for one water, and also what are the key elements of one water approach. And in reality, how can you apply those kind of one water approach into stormwater, as I use as an example. I think again, this is that circle of one water paradigm shift that was including 6 elements. With that, that's sort of my presentation. Again, thank you for the opportunity. I would be glad, I think, answer questions, or maybe even after call, we can do some follow up. Yeah, here's my email, also post here. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Harry. And we do have about 4 or 5 minutes for questions. So if anybody has any last questions for Harry, you can type those in the Q&A feature. I just want to say, Harry, thank you so much for coming. I know throughout our strategic planning process, we've heard a lot about integrating the One Water approach into the Schuylkill Action Network's work. And I appreciate all those great resources you mentioned, like the Stormwater BMP database and the Classic tool. So hopefully we can start using that a little bit more. And we do have some questions for you here. So the first one is, how can an individual water supply apply or adopt this concept in their work?
Yeah, so the water supply, I think also I think depending on the region, I think our research, I think we can see a difference between the user or utility municipality in maybe more toward the East Coast versus West Coast. I think in the West Coast, I think water supply become a very important element because they're short on water. I think in some of the eastern part of it, I think maybe it's balance of waters because it can be a the sort of the reservoir water, the thing management. So it's I think there's some geographical variation here. I think for the Western, I think maybe this is maybe just for the audience here. The water reuse will come into play. I think you may have heard there's a national water reuse action plan. I think emphasize the full circle of the One Water. I think in there, I think if we really can do stormwater harvesting, capturing water, I think the water supply become a very key there. So I think that there's a regional variation. So depending on your driver, your regulatory framework, I think this can be we can customize some sort of solution for the user stakeholder. Yeah.
And then I also wanted to ask a question. So you mentioned, a lot of different stakeholders like city planners, again, water utilities, farmers, businesses, and general public. So I was just wondering if you could elaborate for a minute or two about who is really kind of the key audience for the One Water approach and who folks should kind of be reaching out to about this.
Yeah. So I think that I didn't mention the detail, but one of the point I alluded to really like we use like a multi-stakeholder collaboration approach. But let me say sometimes there's because there's competing needs in there because the water is a finite resources. Sometimes people come in with different goal. I think that in that case, I think that this is kind of a collaborative approach will be important. And then the other thing sort of like you may not have a sort of optimized solution that can satisfy everybody, but I think by having people sitting on the table can talk about issues and then maybe doing some sort of scenario planning and see which one maybe can be ideally can reach a consensus. I think and in some other cases maybe fallback really is that this is maybe the best available scenario. Maybe that this is a sort of one of the feasible scenarios. So I think even people like upstream, downstream, sometimes they have an issue. But I think again, One Water approach will rely on thinking holistically, but also bring people on the table even with a different opinion. Talk through things, that's also very important.
Great, thank you so much, Harry. If you have any other questions for Harry, I put his email in the chat box, and we'll also be sending out these slides and more information in a follow-up email. So with that, I would like to turn it over to our next presenter, talking about the fundamentals of environmental justice and showing the EJSCREEN tool and how we can use that in the Schuylkill watershed. So I'll turn it over to Matt Lee from the EPA, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and show your slides. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and thank you for having me. Just want to confirm that you can hear me and see my slides.
Yep, you're all good to go.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you very much for that presentation on the One Water approach, certainly enlightening. And we're going to switch gears a little bit here, but obviously part of that approach was community engagement, and a huge part of environmental justice is community engagement. So it's not switching gears too much. But again, my name is Matthew Lee. I work at EPA's Philadelphia office in the Office of Communities, Tribes, and Environmental Assessment. And I'm going to give you a very quick presentation, talk briefly about what is environmental justice, some of the definitions associated with EJ, a very brief history of the EJ movement, and then talk about one of the tools that EPA has to integrate EJ, which is EJSCREEN. I'm going to talk about some of the data uses and limitations associated with that tool, and hopefully I'll have time for a live demo. So why does EJ matter? Why are we here? Why was environmental justice included in this agenda? And I think this quote really sums it up very, very nicely. And this is a quote by Dr. Robert Woolard, who is considered to be the father of environmental justice. He really started EJ work back in the late 70s, and continues today. But he is quoted as saying, "Whether by conscious design or institutional neglect, communities of color in urban ghettos, in rural poverty pockets, or on economically impoverished Native American reservations face some of the worst environmental devastation in the nation." And really it's that devastation that kind of spurred the EJ movement. So the EJ movement itself seeks to protect those who are politically disenfranchised and economically incapable of making changes in their neighborhood. It strives to end the environmental racism arising from the abuse and the neglect of the local environment. And then also it seeks to systemically address and redress the disproportionate burden placed on low-income and minority communities. And again, that disproportionate burden is really part of the crux of environmental justice. Vulnerable communities, low-income and minority communities that are disproportionately impacted by pollution. So EPA itself has some of its own definitions associated with environmental justice. Go over those really quickly. We define EJ as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with the respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of our environmental laws, regulations, and policies. What does fair treatment and meaningful involvement mean or indicate? Fair treatment means that no group of people should bear a disproportionate share of negative environmental consequences resulting from industrial, governmental, and commercial operations or policies. You know, again, getting back to that disproportionate share. And then meaningful involvement. Meaningful involvement means that people have the opportunity to participate in decisions about activities in their environment. That we as EPA, you know, as your state and local government, you know, agencies, we will seek out and facilitate the community's involvement, and specifically of those affected by the activities in their environment. Those, you know, that facilitation, that input that we find from the community is then considered in the decision-making process. And ultimately, the goal is that, you know, the public can actually influence, you know, the regulatory agency's decision. And really, it was, unfortunately, it was the lack of fair treatment and meaningful involvement that really galvanized the EJ movement back in the late 70s and early 80s. You could do a whole course on the EJ movement. This is very kind of cherry-picked, you know, highlights of the EJ movement. I'm not even really going to focus on the first two, other than that the EJ movement did finally, you know, the EJ movement is and always will be most likely a grassroots-led movement. It gained national attention in Warren County, North Carolina in 1982. I think it has regained national attention now in 2020, but it is still a grassroots-led movement, and I think and always will be. But that that grassroots movement, as I've mentioned, gained national attention and then gained some statistics behind it in the early 80s. And in 1983, the GAO found that three of 4 off-site hazardous waste sites in Region 4 were located near minority communities. 4 years later, the United Churches of Christ identified race as the single most significant factor in the siting of hazardous waste facilities. Race, not income status, race. 5 years later, in 1992, the National Law Journal alleged that EPA itself engaged in environmental racism. And they found 3 reasons for that. Federal fines were not as strict for industries operating in communities of color. Cleanup efforts in those communities were slower, and standards for those cleanup efforts were also not as high. Accordingly, in '92, the EPA established the Office of what was then called the Environmental Equity. Now it is called Environmental Justice. And in '94, President Clinton issued an executive order on environmental justice. And since that time, we have, we've done a lot. We as EPA have done a ton of work and really worked to progress the principles of environmental justice. I mean, we really have, but there is still a lot to do. In 2007, that same United Churches of Christ study was re-released 20 years later, and it concluded that people of color were found to be even more concentrated around hazardous waste facilities than previously shown. And then in 2011, EPA's own analysis of waste facilities revealed that communities adjacent to those facilities were both disproportionately minority and low income and at a greater risk of exposure to hazards. So again, we recognize that there is a lot of work still to be done. And under Administrator Jackson, she called for environmental justice to be an agency-wide initiative and incorporated into the agency's day-to-day operations. And one of the main tools that we have to integrate EJ into the daily operations of EPA is EJSCREEN. I am EJSCREEN's point of contact for Region 3. I've conducted over 7,000 individual assessments utilizing the tool. EJSCREEN was released to the public in 2007, so we have 7 years worth of experience associated with the tool. And again, 7,000 individual assessments really points to Region 3's efforts to integrate EJ into our daily activities. But what is EJSCREEN? EJSCREEN is our web-based GIS tool for nationally consistent EJ screening and mapping. We have coverage for the entire United States and Puerto Rico in EJSCREEN. And what sets EJSCREEN apart from some of your other, EPA GIS tools like EnviroAtlas or NEPA Assist, this is a tool that combines environmental and demographic data to highlight areas where vulnerable populations may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. So your vulnerable populations, your minority, low income, linguistically isolated communities that may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. And really that gets back to the crux of EJ, to the very definition of environmental justice, to the executive order that President Clinton issued. So again, this is a tool that combines environmental and demographic data. I am going to focus on some of the limitations. I know it might seem weird to start with the limitations of the tool before I go into what it actually does, but I do want to, these are important, and these are important to understand the utility of the tool and how the tool is supposed to be used and how it is not supposed to be used. Any screening tool, and as you see, EJSCREEN has screen in its name, any screening tool is a starting point. It is a pre-decisional tool, right? EJSCREEN specifically is a pre-decisional tool that does not direct final outcomes for EPA. It is a baseline tool that, as any other screening tool, should always be supplemented with local information or experience, especially given the subject matter, environmental justice, right? As I mentioned, this is a mostly grassroots-led movements, community-led movements. You're not going to be able to sit behind a computer, right, and screen for every issue that a community may be facing. EJSCREEN helps characterize the community, right? You then need to go to that community and find their specific EJ issues or their environmental issues. As I mentioned, one of the great things about EJSCREEN is that we do have national coverage, right? But that is also one of its limitations. If you have a nationally consistent screening tool, you're limited to the data sets that you can use, which are collected on a nationally consistent level. So we don't have health data in EJSCREEN. We don't have safe drinking water data in EJSCREEN. That information is not collected consistently on the national level, and therefore we couldn't incorporate it. So it does not cover every single environmental issue. And if you come away with nothing else from this presentation, EJSCREEN does not identify EJ communities or not EJ communities. EPA does not have a definition of an EJ community. I don't think it would be appropriate to have such a definition. We know communities are very, even the definition of a community. How do you correctly grasp the geographic area around a community? That's going to change, with every different community. So EPA, EJSCREEN simply highlights places for the further review for the potential of EJ concerns. All that being said, we have a very powerful tool that does a great job characterizing the community, both in terms of demographics and the environmental burdens that they may face. I'm going to do a quick time check right here. This should be good. Again, EJSCREEN features 11 different EJ indices, one for each of the 11 environmental indicators, which I'm going to go over in a second. And this is an attempt to combine environmental and demographic data to highlight areas where vulnerable populations, your poor, minority, linguistically isolated populations may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. EJSCREEN is web accessible. All you need is internet access to access the tool. You do not need any special GIS software, and it is very user-friendly. It looks very much like Google Maps, and it provides information in a user-friendly format also in terms of reports, maps, and bar graphs, and I'll show you all this. Also, in the name of transparency, you can download all the raw data. So all those EJ indices, you can actually download that, and if you're your own GIS person, you could incorporate that information into your own GIS system. The information in EJSCREEN is updated annually and features annually updated demographics from the ACS. The ACS is based on 5-year averages. And EJSCREEN, and I will mention next week, right now we're using version, if you go on the website and I'll show you, we're using version 2019. Next week, headquarters is supposed to release version 2020. Which is actually going to have some climate change indicators and a couple of other indicators along with these annually updated demographics. So again, this is a tool that does get updated. And it is at a higher resolution than our previous maps or than our previous tools. Everything in EJSCREEN is available at the block group level. There are over 200,000 block groups in the United States. And I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but each one of these irregularly shaped polygons in here is a census block group. So some in highly densely populated areas are very small. Some in more industrial areas or in more rural areas are very large. So you have to take that into account when analyzing communities, the size of the block group. But on average, your block groups have about 1,400 people. I've seen as low as 300 up to about 3,000. Once you get above 3,000, you're usually talking about a census tract. But a block group, right, is the most refined level for which the Census Bureau releases demographic data. It does not get more refined than this. So again, you might be talking about 1,400 people in your more rural areas. Sometimes a community, right, is not anywhere close to 1,400 people. So that block group may, include several different communities. So you just have to take that, into account. In your more densely populated areas, Philadelphia, for example, block groups are literally a city block or a couple city blocks, and they really are, adequate representations or characterizations of the community in question. One of the really nice things, especially in terms of user friendliness about EJSCREEN, is that everything is ranked as percentiles. This allows us to rank those block groups and compare them to the rest of to the state that the block group's located in, to the EPA region, or to the nation. So for example, if a block group is in the 95th percentile for the EJSCREEN index for lead paint, that only means that 5% of the nation has a higher value for that indicator. Or in this case, as it says, the 80th percentile means that only 20% of the population has a higher value. And if any of this stuff doesn't make sense, I know I'm going over it very quickly. I'm always available to give more in-depth EJSCREEN training and talk about the data and the calculations on an as-needed basis. But these are your 11 your 11 environmental indicators. First couple are air, PM, ozone. Then you have a national air toxics assessment data in terms of diesel particulate matter, air toxics cancer risk, respiratory hazard index. You then have a lead paint indicator, traffic proximity indicator, and then 3 proximity to EPA regulated facilities. So proximity to Superfund sites, proximity to RMP facilities, and then proximity to hazardous waste facilities. And then also your wastewater discharger indicator, which is based on RISI modeling and proximity to NIPD's majors. If you have questions about these environmental indicators and the data, the year that they were published, exactly how that data is generated, all this is available from the metadata on within EJSCREEN. As I mentioned, what makes EJSCREEN different from our other GIS tools is this combination of environmental and demographic data. So the components of your EJ index, right, is your single environmental indicator, which I just showed you, how different that is from multiply that by how different the demographic index is from the national average, and then that by the population of the block group. And that's going to give you 11 different EJ indices for each block group in the United States of America and Puerto Rico. And what that allows you to do is then, again, compare that information to the nation, region, or state. So what does that mean? Why are we combining those two data sets? Again, this is an attempt to highlight areas where vulnerable populations may be disproportionately impacted by pollution. And what's really nice is that EJSCREEN does all this for you. Like the calculation is done right there for you. But it's also all the raw data is there available for you as well. So it's transparent and user-friendly. It is user-friendly also in the way that it releases information, reports information. You can get information in terms of reports, graphs, or bar graphs, as I remembered. I'm going to fly through this a little bit here. I did say that everything is available at the block group level, but we realize that block groups may not be your area of interest, right? So the user themselves can generate your own area of interest. You might want to draw a buffer around a site. I'm not saying that's the case here with the bottom polygon here, but let's just say it's a plume of pollution coming off the site. You could actually draw that plume of pollution. Or on the right-hand side of your screen, let's say you're analyzing like a highway expansion on a certain segment of a highway. You could put a half-mile buffer around that highway expansion and analyze the community within that area. EJSCREEN is its own rudimentary GIS system, has a ton of other layers, and mostly community-based layers. So it's really powerful in that way as well. And due to how powerful the tool is, there really isn't one way that we at EPA utilize the tool. We really utilize it in a variety of different ways, for public outreach and engagement, for enforcement targeting, and inclusion and inspection reports, for those NEPA reviews or highway expansion projects, things like that. Different grant reviews and other place-based initiatives. We can analyze the community, via EJSCREEN. Real quickly, I know I'm running out of time, but I'm going to show you a live demo of the tool. If you were to just Google EJSCREEN, this is the home page that pops up. This has a ton of information, and I highly suggest you visit the home page. What is EJSCREEN? A lot of the information I just presented, how to understand the results, where the different environmental indicators come from, including where to download the information if you wanted to. And then also we have a lot of other resources, including I think 12 different YouTube videos associated with different uses of the tool. But if you click launch the tool, you will see EJSCREEN pops up, and EJSCREEN is very much like Google Maps, and we did that in terms of usability, user friendliness. So you just type in your area of interest. I'm going to go real quickly through these radio buttons. It is its own GIS system. You can choose your different base map, depends on what you want to, what you're looking at. The most important radio buttons are right here: add maps and select location. Add maps is really powerful when you're looking at a larger area, right? So we're going to add the EJSCREEN maps, how they compare to the United States, and we're going to put on the wastewater discharger indicator. And you can see, and this kind of makes sense. This follows some of the major rivers around around Philadelphia. But again, so this is the combination of that wastewater discharger indicator and the demographic index. So it's combined. It's highlighting where there's a high potential for pollution burden and vulnerable populations present. And you can see when you have like a 30,000 square foot view, you can see the different areas that are being highlighted. And if you're looking at the whole Schuylkill watershed, for example, you could see the different areas that are being highlighted. Another thing you can do is actually add in information from the web, and I'm going to show you that really quickly. Schuylkill, the hardest word to spell in the language. Let's see. Okay. And I found this earlier, and this is actually Schuylkill Action Network has some information on the GIS platform. And this is just something that I found. I'm giving this as an example, some priority lands in Delaware and Philadelphia County. And if you were to add these on, and again, this is just an example, you could add on any information that you really wanted to, but what you can start to see is the overlap, right, between maybe what's considered public and protected or your high priority areas, and areas that have a higher pollution burden and vulnerable population present. I know I'm running out of time really quick. I did want to show you, this is when you're looking at information kind of at that 30,000 square foot view. But as we mentioned, we know especially EJ issues are very community-based and communities are very specific. One of the things we can do, this is, as I'm sure you guys are familiar, this is PES, Philadelphia Energy Solutions, which is, you can see how huge that facility is compared to, in reference to the neighborhoods around it. We know Philadelphia is a community of neighborhoods, and the communities on each side of PES are going to be, very different. One of the things we can do is, let's say you wanted to look at, let's say, language and linguistically, let's do % linguistically isolated households. You could get this information, and you could see where the linguistically isolated households are around PES. Now, PES isn't highlighted at all because there's zero population in that block group. But you could see, for example, you could find this block group here in the Elmwood section. And one of the things you can do, and I know I'm out of time, so I'm going to quit here in a second, but one of the things you can do is go over into select location, you can click on the block group, right, which contains the site. That's going to highlight this specific block group. And you can either get your EJSCREEN report or you can get your American Community Survey report. And in this case, I'm going to show you really quick the American Community Survey report for this particular block group, and how detailed of information, especially demographic information, we can get. We can find 94% minority. You can get your breakdown by race, right, which is powerful in and of itself. But what's really nice on this second page is you can get your linguistically isolated households information and the type of languages that they're speaking. So you can see in this case that 100% of the linguistically isolated households are speaking Asian or Pacific Island languages. So if you're doing work, in that community, you might want to have a translator present or have your documents translated. And again, I know I've run out of time, but I was going to show you this block group over here. Very different scenario. All the linguistically isolated households speak Spanish. So again, a couple miles apart, right on the other side of the facility, completely different communities, and EJSCREEN can help identify and characterize those communities. So sorry I went over, but that's what I got. And let me see if I don't have my email on here. I'll add it into the chat, but if you do have any questions, lee.matthew@epa.gov, and I'm glad to enhance this presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt, for that introduction to environmental justice and for showing us the tool. Again, this is a topic that was really constantly recurring over the last year and a half throughout our strategic planning process. So we're really happy to kind of start having these discussions and hopefully using this tool to inspire more just and inclusive decision making. So in the interest of time, I'm not going to ask you any questions right now. I did put Matt's email address in the chat, and he's great at giving these presentations at a more local level as well. So I encourage you all to reach out to him and ask questions. And then Matt, if you wouldn't mind, stop sharing your screen and I can move on. Before our break, we would like to announce our awardees. Let me share my screen. So the SAN MVP Awards are also called the Kevin Munley Awards. Kevin Munley was an employee of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. He passed away in 2012. And to honor his dedication to improving our environment and his dedication to the SAN, each year we present one or two people with the SAN MVP Award in his name. So this award is selected annually by the planning committee members, and all the awardees have a history of strong dedication and commitment to this environment and to the SAN. So this year, we would like to congratulate two awardees. The first is Janine Boyle, and the second is Lori Reynolds. So please join me in a silent round of applause from wherever you're calling into today. And we actually have, I believe Lori is with us on the call today, so I'm going to go ahead and promote her to be able to speak. Lori, if you want to unmute and start your screen, you should be able to say a few words if you'd like.
Okay, I don't know if you can see me yet, but I did unmute. I want to thank you for this award. I have it here. I know the significance of it, and I am sincerely honored and appreciate receiving it today. I don't know if other people know, but I recently retired from EPA, and my fondest memories in my career are those when I was working in the SAN. And really, I think the success of this sand is the people that are involved in working on it. I've worked alongside so many great people. I have great memories, and I'm really looking forward to the day when we can get back together and work in person. And I'm hoping to show up at some of the work group meetings in the future when we're able to do that. So thank you again for this award. I really appreciate it, and I enjoy working with the SAN and look forward to the continued success. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori, and we're so glad you could join us again today. I believe Lori was helping to build the SAN from its start in 2003. So again, congratulations, and we really appreciate all that you've done for the SAN. And our second awardee is Janine Boyle. Janine recently retired from the Department of Environmental Protection, and she did actually share a statement with us. It's actually her birthday today, so she wasn't able to join us. But I would like to read her statement for you all. So Janine says, "Good day to everyone at the virtual SAN meeting. I sincerely thank all of you for this beautiful SAN MVP award. I'm sorry that a personal obligation today will not allow me to join you. I've said it before, but it bears repeating. In my 20-year involvement with watershed restoration efforts, the SAN collaboration was one of the most rewarding and enjoyable parts of my work for PADEP. I learned so much from all of you, and I applaud your deep dedication. Watershed restoration, whether it's happening in a small sub-basin or a huge area like the Schuylkill River, is the result of many small successes knitted together over time. So everyone, please keep plugging away at it with creativity and patience, and take time to celebrate your achievements. SAN's long-running track record since 2003 is exceptional and something to cheer on. Please be safe and well in these difficult times. While my retirement, now about 9 months, has not exactly turned out as planned due to COVID, you, by contrast, have all had the arduous, challenging task of continuing to work under these circumstances. Another thing for which I applaud you. Especially to the whole SAN Agriculture Work Group, thank you more than anything for your friendship. I look forward to the post-pandemic day when I can join you for some in-person SAN events and see everyone again. I'd like nothing more than to stand shoulder to shoulder with you and plant some trees. These days, we've all grown accustomed to watching people on TV, speaking from home, with lots of bookshelves behind them. Well, my bookshelf, if you could see it, will proudly display this thoughtful, lovely award. On a last note, that award is given each year in honor of Kevin Munley. I had the joy and good fortune to work closely with Kevin at DEP for several years. I miss him. I believed in what you are all doing, and I humbly accept this award in his memory. Best wishes to all, and have an inspiring SAN meeting today. Thank you to Virginia and Erica from PDE for your outreach and kind words." So again, please join me in having a round of applause for our two winners, Janine and Lori. Thank you for everything that you've done. And I think we are almost right on schedule. So we're going to move into a 5-minute break. It's 11:09 right now, and we'll start back up again at 11:14. And I'll actually open the chat during this time in case you see somebody on the attendee list you'd like to catch up with. You can feel free to do that. So I'll see you back at 11:14. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started, everyone. We're at 11:15 now. So we're gonna move into our project funding panel next. We have 4 different funding programs that we'll have lightning talks about for 5 minutes each. Many of our partners have used these programs in the past, and they're a great resource for you to utilize in the future. So first we have Tim Fenchel from Schuylkill River Greenways, and I believe Tim Eiffel is joining us from Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, talking about Tree Vitalize. And then Drew will talk about some of DCNR's programs, and we'll have Nick finally wrap up with NRCS programs. So I will go ahead and turn it over to Tim Fenchel to talk about the Schuylkill River Restoration Fund.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining the Schuylkill Action Network's annual meeting. It's a bummer to not be with everybody today, but I'm glad you've joined us for the virtual meeting. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and get going here. I know a lot of you who are probably attending today are probably very familiar with the Schuylkill River Restoration Fund, I'm sure, and I know many of you have actually applied and received grants through this program, but we thought it would be helpful to go over the program from sort of like the 40,000 foot view, just to give everybody who may not know about it a little bit more of an understanding about the program and how you can apply and sort of what the foundation of the program is and how you can get involved. So the program was established in 2005. Believe it or not, 2020 is the 15th anniversary of the program. It was established through a docket of the Delaware River Basin Commission, having to do with Exelon Nuclear's Limerick generating station in Pottstown and their water withdrawal from the river. And the program was established to return funding towards the watershed for projects. And it was done to undertake implementation projects that will improve the quality and quantity of water in the Schuylkill River and its tributaries. The program since 2005 has been managed by the Schuylkill River Greenways. We also established a regional advisory committee made up of about a half dozen folks, including Exelon Nuclear, Philadelphia Water Department, the Schuylkill Action Network, Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, EPA, the Department of Environmental Protection, and most recently, Aqua Pennsylvania. And the program is dedicated to conserving the Schuylkill River watershed and the drinking water in the region. So I don't want to go into too many details here, but it's important to understand what the criteria of the program is and what kind of projects the program funds. So the program's criteria are that the project needs to show an ability to improve the quality and quantity of water in the Schuylkill River. It has to show a relationship to previous watershed restoration efforts. The project needs to be consistent with local, state, federal, and other plans. And the project needs to be positioned for immediate implementation with, sometimes we will fund a little bit of design, but that design needs to be towards the tail end of the design work, and that design work needs to lead to sort of short-term implementation. Project needs to be single-phased or in the final phase of implementation. The project will require minimal monitoring to demonstrate the positive environmental impact and effects. Project will effectively leverage the resources of 2 or more partners, including a sponsoring partner. One of the great things about this program is our grantees have done a fantastic job of bringing in partners, whether it's local school groups, volunteer groups, or just highlighting and making use of the expertise of so many of the great regional partners that we have. That's a really important part of a successful grant application, is the partnerships piece. And then we also have a desire to fund projects that will have an impact on low income or underserved communities, much like the presentation that we just saw. The projects typically land in one of the 4 categories. They need to be a stormwater project, an agricultural remediation project, abandoned mine drainage, or they need to be a project that addresses high priority land conservation and preservation. So those are the 4 areas of funding that we support. The process of the grant program, it's a 2-stage process. Letters of interest are typically due in early to mid-March. And then letters of interest and applicants who are invited to the 2nd stage, the full application is usually due in early May. So this next year, the 2021 grant program will open up, and we'll make an announcement shortly after the 1st of the year in January, usually the 1st or 2nd week in January. And so then that sort of kicks off the start of the new grant round for folks to start looking at what projects they have that might be ready to go. We will fund grant awards, and we make awards up to $100,000. The program requires a 25% match, and that can be either cash or in kind. And then the projects are given a 3-year grant contract timeline to complete projects. We're very flexible with extensions, so that we try to stick to that 3-year timeline, but we do approve extensions if needed and if appropriate. So just thought I'd show you a couple slides of projects that have been completed. This was actually the very first project ever completed through the Schuylkill River Restoration Fund. It was a grant award to Berks Nature, and this was a project up in the far northeastern part of Berks County. It was a stream bank stabilization project, a riparian buffer. You can see some stream bank fencing, cattle crossings that were installed here as well. We've funded about a dozen or so abandoned mine drainage projects. This was one that was funded pretty early on in the program's history. And then, you know, we've done quite a few projects within the city of Philadelphia. This was one at the Albert Greenfield School, where the project resurfaced, tore up the asphalt and the blacktop, and put down permeable surfaces, did a number of rain gardens and stormwater collection. So this was a really fun project. But today we have, I think, 6 funders of the program: Exelon Nuclear, Philadelphia Water Department, Aqua Pennsylvania, Partnership for the Delaware Estuary, Coca-Cola, DTE, and Mom's Organic Market. They have all been funders of the program. And so that's a really, really quick presentation on the program. There is everything that you need to know about the program, including when we post the 2021 program guidelines and application information. That all can be found at schuylkillriver.org, which is the Schuylkill River Greenways website. If you go to the conservation tab on the homepage, you can just follow directions to get to that information. You also certainly should feel free to email me. That's my email at the top of the page there. So certainly feel free to inquire if you know of a group that may have a project that might fit. I certainly would love to talk to everybody who may have potential interest in this grant program.
Great, thank you so much, Tim. And again, we put Tim's email and some other resources in the chat, and we'll also be sending everything out after the meeting as well. So I'd like to turn it over to our next panelist, Tim Eiffel. I hope I'm saying that correctly, from the Pennsylvania Horticultural Society, is going to talk about Tree Vitalize today.
Thanks, Erica. Yes, that you were saying it correctly. My name is Tim Eiffel. I'm the Associate Director of Trees here at PHS, sitting about 3 or 4 blocks north of that playground project you just saw. And let me get my screen shared for you here. I will do my best to stick to my 5 minutes. I'm starting a timer because I'm not always great about that. But I am actually thrilled that it's a virtual event, because we're doing our big tree distribution next week. We have 1,100 bare root trees coming in. So I probably would not be able to join you in person. So I'm happy to be here in this mode. So here at PHS, we do a lot of work with trees all around the region in a lot of different ways that promote the all the benefits you all know about with trees: health benefits, aesthetics, community building. But we have one program in particular that's really exclusively devoted to improving water quality, and that's our Tree Vitalized Watershed Grants. This is a program that's been around since 2005, I believe was our first year of granting. And it is funded by a couple of organizations. The DEP, Pennsylvania DEP, through their Growing Greener grants, supports us. Aqua is another one of our supporters as well. And then PICO. And we here at PHS administer the program and work almost exclusively right now in Philadelphia counties and then the other 4 immediate surrounding counties: Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, and Delaware. And our grants are focused on improving water quality using primarily trees. So we help organizations and even individual landowners, even private landowners, plant trees in riparian areas and adjacent uplands with the goal of improving water quality using all the great benefits that trees provide in those kinds of areas. So we partner with a lot of different organizations around the region. A lot of the plantings themselves involve volunteers like this one you see here. This one was carried out, I believe, by Cheney University with some students and community members there. And the projects do take place over the course of 1 year. And our grants fund 75% of the project costs. And so our grantees are required to provide a 25% match, pretty similar to the last program you heard about. So this is a map of our projects from 2005 to 2019. I don't believe our current projects are up on this map yet. We've had about 453 projects we've funded over that period. You can see they're primarily in those 5 counties I mentioned, but there are a few scattered ones in Berks and elsewhere as well. And we're actually looking at expanding into Berks for future years too. But as you can see, the vast majority of our projects are in these 5 counties. We work with the county conservation districts in each of Bucks, Montgomery, Chester, and Delaware counties. And they are kind of the gatekeepers for projects in those areas. So organizations who are interested in getting one of the grants start off by going through the watershed coordinators in each of those conservation districts. And then here in Philadelphia County, PHS acts in that role too. So those grants come through us, but then PHS does all of the administering of the projects. So the money can be used for some site prep. It can be used for the plant material and related supplies itself, and a small amount of administrative funds as well. But really the bulk of the grant funding that we provide is going to that plant material, which in the case of these grants are going to be mostly trees and shrubs, though there is some of the money can be used for herbaceous seeding as well. But really this is a tree focused project. So we want to build up the tree cover, tree canopy in those riparian areas, and all of the water quality benefits that the trees specifically are going to bring. Plantings are allowed on public lands as well as private lands, though, but for private lands, they have to be partnered with a nonprofit organization who will help the management of the program, and they also have to agree not to disturb the plantings once they're in the ground. The grant levels do vary a lot. I think our smallest projects are under $1,000, and the biggest one we've had, at least in recent years, has been about $35,000. So, there's some really small projects that we work with on small little patches of land, much less than an acre. And then there are some really big ones as well. So we like to really see that variety. And of course, all of them have wonderful benefits for water quality. This is just one of our recent plantings for this year. This is at a farm in Chester County, I believe, and this was in partnership with Stroud Water Center. This was carried out this summer. So we're really excited that most of our 2020 grantees were able to carry out their plantings this year. There were a few that did postpone until 2021, but most of the ones we had already granted were able to go through with it, which we're really appreciative of. course, a lot of this work, is done outside and volunteers can be spread out. So it's a great safe way to get people involved. We are currently looking for projects for 2021. I realize I'm hitting my 5-minute mark, so I'll wrap it up quickly. We're pretty close to the deadline though. Those project applications are due November 23rd. So we're almost there, but there's still plenty of time to get a proposal into us. If you're in Philadelphia County, you can reach out directly to me. You can see the website is up there in the chat now to get all the grant materials and the announcement. And everything you need to apply. And if you're in one of the surrounding 4 counties, you can reach out either to me or directly to the watershed coordinators in those counties. And their contact info is on that website as well, that link that's in the chat. So I don't want to go over too much of my time, but we're really excited about these projects and the great partnerships we have. So if you know of organizations or riparian areas that would be a great fit, we would love for you to reach out to us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Tim. And I did put the grant announcement link and your email in the chat for folks to reach out to you. And thank you so much for sharing about Tree Vitalize today. So now we'll go ahead and turn it over to Drew Gilchrist, with the Pennsylvania Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, and he'll be talking about some of their funding programs.
Great. Thank you, Erica. Can everyone see my screen with the DCNR grants 2021?
Yep, it looks
Great.
good.
Thank you very much. My name is Drew Gilchrist. I'm a regional advisor for the Department of Conservation and Natural Resources within the Bureau of Recreation and Conservation. My job is a gatekeeper for a grant program called the Community Conservation Partnership Program. This is a statewide program that provides funding for conservation recreation projects available to nonprofits and municipalities across the state. It's a fairly large program. Last year we had several hundred applications. I think it was 440 applications that came in. We gave out a funding of about almost $60 million. This funding source was a combination of dedicated funding that comes in through several sources, as well as some federal funding and other state funding through ATVs and snowmobile registrations. There we go. So who is eligible for our particular program? Well, certainly municipalities of all kinds are eligible for the program, but also municipal agencies, sort of council of governments, municipal authorities, intergovernmental agencies and commissions. Nonprofit organizations can apply. These are ones who have a mission associated with their conservation or recreation. They have to be a 501c3 and registered with the Pennsylvania Bureau of Charitable Organizations. We do a lot of work with land trusts. Land trusts need to be pre-qualified for us, for our program. They have to be in existence for 5 years and approved by the Bureau. And there's a very narrow category in swim lane available to nonprofit, for-profit enterprises. These are possibilities of doing things in the trails section. The for-profits have to be established under Pennsylvania law and are only eligible for the PA rec trails, snowmobile, and ATV accounts. So we can do planning work, help you with planning work, master plans, feasibility studies for playgrounds, for trails, help you out with stewardship of particular property. We have done a lot of the trails. These are the big multimodal trails that go through. Certainly the Schuylkill River Trail is the granddaddy of them all, but the Perkiomen Trail, the other trails, major trails going across the landscape are part of our purview. We have development projects. These are playgrounds, ball fields, little league fields, internal tracks for getting people around a particular park. Within the development section, we have a small community section. We know that small communities face funding challenges. So we have a special formula we use for small communities under 5,000 people. Certainly, more and more importantly these days are our river conservation program, getting people actually out on the river itself, developing access points, doing educational signage. And certainly part of that is the forest river buffers. We have an ambitious goal in the department of having 95,000 acres of riparian buffers being installed. So we're there to help you with that. And then acquisition itself. Acquisition is land for either conservation or for recreational purposes. Our program, I wish it was a 25% match, but unfortunately it's 50-50, so dollar for dollar. We want to see you have the funding secured at the time. We call that ready to go. Funding has to be secured, otherwise you're not going to get our funding. We can't let you, we always have problems with groups who come in for funding and they say, well, we'll raise the money up over the next couple of years. Well, that oftentimes causes some problems. And certainly if you have a match of some kind, you can't spend it before the grant period starts. Cash match can be many different kinds: federal, state, local, private funding, and also non-cash match, especially for development projects, whether it be in-house labor, equipment use, donations, or volunteers. Our grant program opens up on 2021 in January 19th and closes very quickly at 4 p.m. on the 14th. If you are at 4:01, you cannot submit an application. All applications are online. We strongly suggest you contact your regional advisor. I'll show you a slide for that in a moment. There also is not only help from the regional advisors, but if you have trouble with the grant portal itself, the technical questions, the IT questions, there is IT help available for the particular portal. We have regional advisors scattered throughout the state. Within the Schuylkill watershed, Gene Lynch is in Bucks, Philadelphia, and Delaware counties. My own territory is Montgomery and Chester, and Lauren Postinger handles Berks, Schuylkill, and Lehigh Valley. It's really important you talk to a regional advisor. If you just even have a thinking about a particular idea for a project, give a regional advisor a call. We can give you assistance. We are here in the field to help you get good applications in the door. We also want to make sure you're aware in the Schuylkill Highlands area, which is sort of the rock pile area of the Schuylkill, points north of Route 30 up into Berks County and the First Ridge, is the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape. This is an area that's been designated by DCNR as a special area for environmental protection. We do have a mini grant program in this conservation landscape. It does not have as much money as it had in the past, but we're going to have about $50,000 this year we can put out in mini grants to help promote projects in this particular part of the landscape. Carol DeWolf of Natural Lands Trust is our administrator for the program. She can be reached at the number on the slide. And certainly the SchuylkillHighlands.org, we will have information this spring on our website. We're actually getting a brand new website for this. We will have an online portal for the Schuylkill Highlands Conservation Landscape also. So there are some number of sources available at the state level for working your conservation and recreation projects. I will call it off there. Stop sharing. I think I'm within time.
Thank you so much, Drew. I'm going to now pass it off to Nick, last but certainly not least, from NRCS to talk about some of their programs. And again, if you have questions for Drew, I put his email in the chat there, and I certainly encourage everyone to reach out and investigate.
Okay, thanks, Erica. Hopefully everyone can see my screen there. Again, my name is Nick Ramsey, District Conservationist for NRCS in the Berks County Field Office. I also oversee work in the Schuylkill County Field Office as well. There's my contact number. NRCS, for those who don't know, is a branch of the U.S. Department of Agriculture. So we are federal employees, and we mostly deal with the Farm Bill that gets passed out of Congress every 5 or 6 years. There's a new or changes to the Farm Bill. The most recent Farm Bill was 2018. And so I stole this presentation to try to just give you a quick rundown of what programs are available currently through the Farm Bill. Pennsylvania, we do a variety of projects all across the state. You can see there from this map, kind of a brief look at where we're doing most of our work, but you can see that it varies all across the state. Of course, over in the Schuylkill River, we're doing a lot of work in the communities that you would expect, predominantly in the agricultural communities, in Berks County and in Schuylkill County, and of course, a little bit here and there in Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester. The numbers here are from 2018. I wasn't able to get 2019 numbers yet. I think there's some delay in compiling our 2019 numbers. But generally speaking, every year, NRCS brings about $20 to $30 million across the state in cost share assistance to landowners to install practices on their private lands. A majority of that is in agriculture, but there's also a lot of work that goes into forest landscapes, wildlife restoration projects, all the different areas there. You can see in Delaware in 2018, about 28,000 acres, $3.3 million. Again, the bulk of our money does go to the Chesapeake Bay watershed, but quite a bit of it does come to the Delaware, and most of what comes to the Delaware does come to the Schuylkill watershed, where the agricultural density is a lot higher. Just some brief information on the Farm Bill. It's here to support farmers and ranchers, streamline, target, simplify programs. These are goals that were set up with the 2018 Farm Bill, and continue to offer the types of assistance producers have come to expect and improve upon them. Every day, NRCS across the nation donates or puts out about $8 million a day in conservation systems. It's quite a large process across the country, many different programs, and a lot of money that goes into getting conservation on the ground across the country. Here's some more numbers, facts, figures. 2018 again, you can look there and see, we're doing anywhere from 500 to 600 contracts across the state a year, covering thousands and thousands of acres, and millions and millions of dollars. As I said, and usually a typical year for NRCS will be between $20 and $30 million just in Pennsylvania. Our core program is EQIP. EQIP is a cost share program mostly to help farming landscapes with water and air quality and soil quality issues. You think of barnyard issues, manure storages, gully erosion and crop fields as things that you might think of. We're heavily involved in those programs and projects. That is the core program we have. It offers anywhere from 75% to say 90% cost share, depending on your situation. And it's a big backbone of what we do. The CSP program is a newer program, and I'll say newer in the last 10 or 15 years that we've started to utilize more. It's mostly going to be for agronomic practices out in the cropland landscape, where we're putting in cover crops or pesticide practices to decrease the amount of herbicides used, nutrient management practices, things that are meant to improve and decrease the use of things that might end up in our waterways, such as fertilizers, pesticides, etc. ACEP, or Ag Conservation Easement Program, helps landowners, land trusts, and other entities protect, restore, enhance wetlands, grasslands, and working farms through easements. We do a lot of easements in the Schuylkill watershed, predominantly. If you're familiar with our bog turtle easements that we've had in the past, where we've worked with landowners to secure permanent easements on their lands to protect high value wetlands that have a lot of good watershed functions, and also protect endangered species such as the bog turtle. RCPP, or the Regional Conservation Partnership Program, was something that came even more recently in the last 5 years, and we have worked with many folks on this call. Some of you have been applicants for that program. Basically, we utilize partnership agreements to leverage our funds to get work done out in the field. We had a very successful Delaware River Restoration Fund, RCPP, and also a successful RCPP project with Stroud Water Research Center in the last 5 years. Emergency watershed protection. I'll just throw this slide in there real quick. A few years ago, we had some really heavy rain in 2018 that washed away a lot of creek beds and creek banks in Schuylkill County and Berks County and other surrounding counties as well. The Emergency Watershed Protection Program is an emergency program that only comes through sort of special authorization where we have flooding events that do this kind of damage, where we will come back in and we will help to repair and stabilize those banks to protect homes and businesses that are located within a short distance from where the erosion event occurred. Again, Farm Bill is an important tool. We work predominantly with private landowners, farmers, and ranchers to make the best decisions for their land and operations. Again, these programs are a little more geared toward the individual, not necessarily toward the organizations or nonprofits. But if you're working with an individual landowner who has an interest and a need in any area really related to agriculture or restoration or conservation, it's always worth giving us a call, and we can see what best might suit them. This slide's a little blurry, but basically, if you're a landowner, you would contact our office for an application. We would make sure that you're an eligible application. We would put you through a ranking process where we typically get far more applications than we have funds for, but we still do get quite a bit of funds, so it's definitely worth applying for. We work them through the eligibility, the ranking, and then our staff will help them with implementing, whether it's the need to engineer something or the need to give them advice and guidance on selecting the right cover crops. That's where we really, I think, excel in helping people to figure out what exactly they need to do to implement practices on their land. And again, that sort of wraps me up. There's my contact information. I'm in Berks Schuylkill County. As I said, other counties, there's our website for the state. You click on other contacts and you get a list of field offices around the state. NRCS does have a field office in just about every county in Pennsylvania and just about every county in the United States. So if you go to your state's website or Pennsylvania's website, you can find where those folks are. And with that, I will stop sharing. That takes care of me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nick. And also to Tim, and Drew for those lightning updates on some of our funding programs. I also want to let you know that the Schuylkill Action Network on our website keeps us a grant directory. I'll put that link in the chat here, where we try to compile different potential funding sources that might be of interest to you. So in the sake of time, we are going to hold all questions until the end. I'm happy to open up the discussion and let all the attendees talk. But before we do that, I would like to finally and excitedly unveil our new strategic action plan. So let me share my screen again. We've been working for the past year and a half on our strategic planning process. We started back in 2019 with our planning committee, and throughout 2019 and 2020, we worked with stakeholders at last year's annual meeting. We worked with our work groups. We had public listening sessions. And we've been really compiling all the feedback from those groups as well as our public survey to develop our new plan, which will launch on January 1st. And I just want to take a second to thank everybody who was involved in that process, because it's been long, but I hope it will be extremely rewarding. So I just want to talk about some of the major changes that we might see and what we have in store for the Schuylkill Action Network for the next 5 years. So taking all of the feedback that we received, at the basis of our plan is the SWOT analysis. So the SWOT analysis is strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Pretty standard for a strategic planning process. But at every level of our process, we were asking the groups those 4 questions. What are our strengths? So what are we already doing well? What are our weaknesses, which are things that we're not doing? What are our opportunities, which are things on the horizon that we should include? And finally, what threats are on the horizon that we need to address in order to be resilient. So the way I kind of looked at this is that our weaknesses and threats can actually be turned into opportunities. So for example, this is from our abandoned mine drainage work group. I kind of separated it into two different sections. So the first on the left here is our strengths. So those are things that we kept in our plan and want to continue to expand upon. And then on the right here in that word cloud are some examples of opportunities based on our weaknesses, threats, and new things coming up that we need to add into the plan or give extra emphasis on. So based on combining all of these different work groups and feedback sessions and the SWOT analysis, we came up with new vision, mission, values, new work group sections, and a couple of additional sections. So first, let me quickly turn it over to Kate to talk about our new vision, mission, and values.
Thanks, Erica. And again, just to reiterate, we are super excited about the new Schuylkill Action Network Strategic Action Plan, and we're really looking forward to rolling that full document out. But in the meantime, some of the big picture items that we really wanted to make sure everyone was aware of, starting with our vision. So our new official vision for the Schuylkill Action Network as part of our strategic action plan is super clean and simple, is clean water and a healthy Schuylkill River watershed accessible for all. And so just wanted to highlight here that if you're familiar with our previous strategic plan, the real content of our vision hasn't changed. It's mostly about streamlining and really synthesizing that vision into a soundbite that we can all get behind. So we wanted to highlight what we're really driving at with our collective work in the watershed. And while our old vision was certainly comprehensive, it didn't exactly roll off the tongue. And so what you'll see here where it says, the current vision, this is actually just a portion of it. The full text of our old vision statement was a little too long to fit on this slide. But we're really excited about this new vision, and the streamlining process actually feeds directly into our new mission statement as well. And so our new official mission statement is to improve water resources through collaborative action in the Schuylkill River watershed. Super simple, straightforward. We're communicating the same message as our previous strategic plan, but in a more concise way. And we're hopeful that this will make it even easier for our partners to use when they're out and about spreading the good word about SAN. And just to highlight that this, we've been waiting to unveil this mission statement for a little while now. We had a variety of partners who, as far back as 2018, have really been working on this wordsmithing and making sure that we were capturing the spirit of SAN without overwhelming anyone with paragraphs of text. And again, you'll see in the current box down there, this is again a portion of SAN's mission from the previous plan. The whole thing didn't fit on the slide. So all of that information from the previous mission statement is still in our strategic action plan. So we haven't lost anything, but we really just wanted our mission statement to be tight and concise and easy to remember. And one of the other things I wanted to make sure that we highlighted for everybody is our brand new Schuylkill Action Network value statements. I emphasize that these are new. These have not appeared in any of our previous strategic plans, but it is a common feature in modern strategic plans over a lot of organizations and collaboratives. And we, in talking with folks during the planning process, we found that this was really important. as a means to convey to our partners and our constituents the lenses through which we view our work and what's important to us as a collaborative network. And so in particular, these 6 values, action, collaboration, resilience, leadership, equity, and science, were themes that we just kept hearing over and over again from our partner stones. And they really are the cornerstones of the work that we all do together and the underlying framework by which we do all of that work. And so I won't read all of the value statements to you here, but we are really excited about this and being able to articulate this in our plan. So we hope that you'll be as proud of them as we are. Another section of our plan that I wanted to highlight for everybody is the section on implementation and evaluation. And this essentially walks us through, implementation, how we're gonna, or what we intend to do. This is driven by our goals and objectives and the outline and actions as outlined by the strategic plan, and then further codified by our annual work group plans. Evaluation, really just emphasizing the mechanisms by which we're going to measure progress. Our annual reviews at the work group and planning committee levels, the development of annual work group plans, and then our progress reports. And then finally, adaptation. This was just something that we really wanted to emphasize. Again, because SAN is a voluntary partnership, we recognize the need for flexibility, especially in a year like 2020, that need for flexibility and adaptive management has been further emphasized. And so just making sure that we continue to remain nimble and creative as issues and opportunities arise, which has always been a hallmark of SAN, but one that we really want to make sure that we focus on moving forward.
Great, thank you, Kate. So those are some of the introductory, overarching vision, mission, values, and some new sections for the strategic action plan. And then, as you know, we have different work groups as part of the SAN, and also 2 governing bodies. And so each of these work groups and governing bodies has their own section of the plan as well. And I just wanted to note that in the future moving forward, we're actually combining 2 of our work groups. So the Executive Steering Committee did vote to combine our Education and Outreach work group and our Recreation work group into one Engagement and Stewardship work group. So we're really looking forward to that. We noticed there was a lot of overlap between these 2 work groups. So we think by solidifying the 2 of them, we'll really be able to get rid of some of that overlap and really work together more efficiently. So just doing a quick stakeholder analysis, there's a lot of different groups involved in this work group, from environmental educators, teachers, volunteers, the general public, and then of course our nonprofit and government and other environmental professionals. So we kind of plan to separate this out into different topics. There's a lot of overlapping interests in cleanups, working with students and volunteers, storm drain marking. So we're really excited to start getting involved with this new work group. And we actually have our first meeting on December 15th, and we'll have more information for you then. And then, of course, our other work groups are all still going strong, and each one has their own section of the plan. It is a little bit of a different format in the new strategic plan. So I just wanted to give you an example of that real quick. This is from our abandoned mine drainage work group. So you can see at the top here, we just have a really brief introduction, no more than 1 or 2 sentences that relates back to our mission statement. Then each section also has another very brief goal. So you can see it's pretty simple and always relates back to clean water. And then we also have our objectives and actions. So you can see here, each objection or objective is an action word. So our first one for AMD is remediate AMD. And then all of these actions, these lettered bullets here, relate to the objective, which then relates back to the goal, which then relates back to our main goal. So we really tried to, make everything cohesive in this new plan. And I know we're running short on time here. So Kate, I don't know if you want to just quickly talk about this slide for a couple of seconds as well, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So the only, every strategic plan has some ways to measure how we're moving forward towards the goals. And so in this specific iteration of our plan, we have rolled all of the work group, individual work group goals up into these 4 buckets that are our progress benchmarks across the strategic plan. So those quickly are protect and restore, educate and engage, collaborate, and finance.
Great. Thanks. In the interest of time, we'll just stop there, and we'll be sending out all of these slides to you all so you can take a look at what those progress benchmarks will look like. So I am actually going to open up the meeting to anybody that wants to stay on and have a discussion, ask questions for our panelists or network. But before I do that, I just want to let you all know that I will be sending out a follow-up email with all the links from today. Our final version of the strategic action plan will be available on our website, and we'll be sending out an email to all of our members with that information once it's available and all nicely organized and beautifully designed. Also, if you aren't already on our email list, you can get notified about the plan and any upcoming meetings, as well as a general login to our website, which has a lot of extra resources, and that's all free to anybody who signs up. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and actually let people join us as panelists, so that if you have questions, you can feel free to let us know, or let us know your thoughts on the strategic plan. Just give me a second here because I'm not sure I can do it all at once. And if you don't want to stay on for this portion, I just want to say thank you to everybody for joining us today. We hope you found this informative, and we hope to see you again soon.